Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Live's Week 1 pregame show. That's right, Falcons versus Seahawks. It's game day. We're here. We're ready to kick things off for the 2020 NFL season. I'm, of course, Kevin Knight, joined by my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way on Twitter. Adnan, how we feeling? How we doing?
Feeling fantastic. Last night I was just so giddy. We have the season back. Autumn hope is eternal right now, and until the Falcons go 0-2, there's the expectations. They haven't broken me yet.
Yeah. Like I think we were talking about it before the show. Like this year is kind of weird for me. Like I feel a little bit muted. I mean, maybe some of that is like no preseason, and maybe some of that is just maybe this team has broken me over the past 2 years. But I'm glad to see Adnan still has the youthful exuberance and the autumn hope. So we'll maybe clash a little bit there, but obviously I'm hopeful that they'll do well this week and break the 2-year tradition now of just getting blown out in week 1. And there are some reasons for optimism, which we will get to. First things first, let's do a quick look at the inactive list. Falcons actually only had 5 inactives, which is interesting because it's different than previous years. If you'll remember the rule changes, you can actually elevate additional people from the practice squad, and you can have additional active players as long as one of them is an offensive lineman. So the Falcons didn't take advantage of the practice squad elevation. They did not bring up any players to the active roster, but they did activate additional players from the active roster. So they actually have 5 inactives, which is a little bit interesting. So the big ones, obviously, Kendall Sheffield. We didn't expect him to play. He's officially out. And then the big disappointment is Marlon Davidson, who was questionable, rookie second-round pick at defensive tackle. He will be missing this game as well. So we'll hope that with a little bit extra rest, we think he was close to playing. So hopefully with a little bit extra rest, he can make his debut next week. Other names: Quadri Olison, the running back. Timon Paris, which was someone who was added after final cuts, and then Charles Harris, the defensive end. So, Adnan, any notable things there from that inactive list for you?
No real surprises. I'm disappointed that we're not going to get to see Marlon Davidson, but like you said, I think he was limited in practice all week. He has that he had that deep bone bruise from a couple of weeks ago, and I think they're just letting him rest it up for another week. Hopefully he'll be ready to go against the Dallas Cowboys next week. But we can cover his spot. Tyler Davison is going to start. He's a stout run defender, maybe the best run defender on the team next to Grady Jarrett, of course. And you're facing a Seahawks team which loves to establish the run with Chris Carson, a team that doesn't # let Russ cook. So, I think it makes sense that I think Tyler Davison, either way, even if Davison versus Davidson, even if Marlon Davidson was completely healthy, I think we would have gotten to see a lot more Tyler Davison, just because I think the Seahawks are one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL.
Yeah, you're right there, and I would be shocked if Pete Carroll was actually going to # let Russ cook, just because he has failed to do so basically every single year that he's had a choice. So I don't expect this to be a high-flying Seattle passing attack this week. But yeah, like you said, Marlon Davidson, hopeful to see him play. Mostly going to be an interior guy, but he has some edge flexibility, kind of similar to like an Alan Bailey. But, in his place, we could potentially see John Kaminsky get more snaps, and he was one of the most improved players from this training camp, kind of playing that Jack Crawford role. So that'll be an interesting look there to see if maybe John Kaminsky is one of the beneficiaries of his absence. And then with Kendall Sheffield out, the corner depth is a weak spot. We're probably going to see more of Bleedy Ray Wilson, which doesn't really concern me because every time Bleedy has come on the field, he's been fine. Like he's fine. Like he's not an exciting corner starter, but he's not going to get destroyed out there. He's a solid guy that can play basically anywhere, and actually has been really good against tight ends. I think he was one of the key players in that 49ers upset last year who covered George Kittle and prevented, I think, a touchdown. So with the Seahawks potentially going to run some 2 tight end sets, I believe it's official now that Josh Gordon was not reinstated for this game, so he won't be out there. So I do think we might see Seattle lean towards more 2 tight end type stuff. We will see there. But yeah, Matt Hennessy was taken off the injury list, which was good news as well. So he's presumably going to start at left guard. Maybe James Carpenter will start. What do you think about that? Biggest position battle still going into week 1. Do you think one of them has locked it up, or is it going to be, like Quinn said, a rotation?
The fact that Quinn said that it's going to be a rotation tells me that it's anything but locked up. Yeah. And I hate it when a coach comes in and says that an offensive line position is going to be a rotation. Like, what does that even mean? Don't patronize us. Yeah. Just pick someone. Have that be their job, and then if they're on a short leash, you don't have to say anything. You can just yank him and put in Matt Hennessy if need be. But I don't think saying that it's a rotation helps anything at all. I mean, right now it's James Carpenter's job. He's experienced in it. Hopefully he's better than he was last year. Hennessy, I think if there was a preseason, Matt Hennessy might have been able to usurp Carpenter when it comes to that job, but the fact that he's a rookie and they don't want to start a rookie out there immediately week 1, maybe that had something to do with it, but I think we'll see Matt Hennessy in that position by midseason.
Yeah, and I hope that Hennessy, this rotation talk is mostly due to Hennessy, maybe some uncertainty about how he's going to feel coming off his injury, and I think that's reasonable because these guys really haven't gotten any true game reps, and maybe Hennessy's feeling fine, but they want to kind of control his snap count this week coming off of injury. James Carpenter was the worst offensive lineman on the team last year when he played, so I'm hoping it's mostly Matt Hennessy, but we will see there, and maybe there's a chance Carpenter could be better, I hope, since he's making like $6 million. But that's a discussion for another time. We've already covered that in detail this offseason, the bad contract for James Carpenter. But let me just briefly touch on the Seahawks inactives. No major names here, although they do have 2 offensive tackles inactive. So their depth there is going to be a little suspect. But the Philip Dorsett inactive, DJ Dallas running back, DeAndre Walker, Georgia Grade, I believe, he's inactive. Alton Robinson, their rookie pass rusher, inactive, and then Cedric Abuhi and Jamarco Jones, 2 offensive tackles, inactive. So no major names that they're missing there. Maybe the tackle depth would be the most suspect thing here. I think their swing tackle now is I don't know. So that might be a little bit concerning, but do you have any thoughts on those inactives? Anyone missing there that you're interested in?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Josh Gordon isn't playing, so that's the biggest name. There's nobody that moves the needle in that group of players that you just mentioned in regard to they're inactive, so maybe the Vegas line moves by like a point or 2.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the depth on Seattle's roster is quite suspect, and that was the problem last year with them too. At defensive tackle, they have 3 players total, including the 2 starters. So, Jerron Reed, the best player on that interior, very good. And then Poona Ford, their kind of run-stuffing nose guy. And then they have 1 other defensive tackle listed on the depth chart. So, Jerron Reed's a very good player, and Poona Ford is probably, akin to a Tyler Davison, who's a good player against the run. But, they're perilously thin there. And then at the edge, it's basically a wasteland with Bruce Irvin as your headliner. And as we remember from his days in Atlanta, he was like the 3rd or 4th best pass rusher here, like 3 years ago or 2 years ago, when he couldn't get ahead of Vic Beasley or Tack or anybody else. So that matchup has to be pretty concerning for the Seahawks in terms of how they match up against an offensive line. The pass rush was their biggest problem last year, and they didn't really do anything to alleviate that problem. So what do you think about that, Audon? Do you think that the Falcons are going to have an advantage there when they're on offense?
Yeah, I think the Falcons are going to have an advantage everywhere on offense today. It's the defense, which I'm very concerned about against Russell Wilson. This isn't the Seahawks team from a few years ago where when you go up against the Seahawks, you give pause to starting that quarterback in fantasy football, for example, because you have the Legion of Boom and you have those great linebackers led by Bobby Wagner, who's still there and who's still one of the best in the game in regard to middle linebackers. And you have those amazing stout pass rushers like Averill and Bennett. This is a Seahawks team that they're going to go as far as Russell Wilson takes them and as far as that offense takes them. They got Jamal Adams, who's one of the best strong safeties, probably maybe the best strong safety in football. I think that's fair to say. But, them losing Clowney was huge this past offseason. The fact that they paid draft pick compensation for Jadeveon Clowney and lost him. I don't think we're making enough of a big deal. I don't think we're criticizing the Seahawks front office for doing something like that after doing the same thing with Sheldon Richardson the year earlier. Like, they're just squandering draft picks year after year. And, with Adams, at least they're going to keep him long term. But this, I think this has the makings of a shootout. I predicted the other day it would be 24-23, which isn't exactly a shootout. Mm-hmm. I think there will be some turnovers forced on both sides just because the offense isn't completely in rhythm yet. That's the reasoning for the smaller score line. That's why I'm not going into the 30s, but right. I very well could be wrong. It could be in the 30s, but this will be a game predicated by offense today.
Yeah, I agree. And, like you said, they have some pieces in the secondary that are quality, and their linebackers are still really good with Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. But, Shaquille Griffin, charge on, my UCF brethren. He's not a cornerback one that you would want to match up with like elite wide receivers. So he's going to need safety help against Julio. Quentin Dunbar is a solid guy they were able to pick up. He's definitely a good cornerback too. And then they have Trey Flowers at cornerback 3. Trey Flowers was one of the weak spots on that secondary last year, returning. Oh, what's up, Evan?
Oh, hey.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So like Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs probably like the strongest part of that secondary, those two safeties. But other than that, the corners are a little bit concerning going up against a high-powered passing attack. And the other part, like we just said, like without a pass rush, those guys are more likely to get exposed if they have to cover Julio on deep routes and things like that, and Calvin Ridley too. So that has to be a big concern for the Seahawks, and that could lead to more points, particularly because to get pressure, they very well might have to like blitz someone like Jamal Adams, who, to be fair, is maybe like the best blitzing safety in football. But if he's getting sent on blitzes every down, like you lose a lot of other impact plays from him on the back end. So that'll be interesting to see. And then in terms of how the Falcons match up on defense, well, I do want to also throw out, we should mention Todd Gurley, right? Because he's a major part of this offense. The Seahawks were abysmal against the run last year. They weren't great against the pass. They were below average, but against the run, they were among the NFL's worst defenses with Jadeveon Clowney playing on that defensive line. They gave up 4.9 yards per carry last year. And some of that had to do with Jerron Reed missing, I believe, 6 games. But that team was really bad against the run. And that matchup could be one that the Falcons try to target with Todd Gurley, because we know Dirk Cutter loves to run the ball early in games. So
on 2nd and 10.
No, don't you put that evil on me. You put that evil on me, okay? But but we will get to the defense here. I do want to. What do you guys think about the potential for Todd Gurley to have a good game this week?
I'll let Evan take the floor. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he usually has good games against Seattle. Even last year, I think he had 3 total touchdowns against them. And also, they're going to want, all offseason, at least since they signed him, it's been like, what is Todd Gurley going to do? Like, is he still help? I'm sure they've heard it enough to where they want to at least display something. So I imagine it's going to be pretty good for him, especially if they get in the red zone. I think that's really where you're going to see Gurley shine. Mm-hmm. But I still think they're going to use Brian Hill a lot too, because you don't want to waste whatever is left with Gurley's knees and stuff. You don't want to just like waste it in the first week. You want to kind of stretch it out over the season. So I think Brian Hill's going to be used a whole lot too. But when they get in the red zone, just feed Gurley as much as you can if it's not working. then you kind of look elsewhere. But I mean, it's worked for the Rams in the past.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have anything you wanted to add on Gurley? None or?
Yeah, I think it'll be not full running back by committee. Partially. They're not going to give Gurley bell cow carries, and if they should, then somebody should be arrested on the Falcons coaching staff. But yeah, Gurley has that familiarity against the Seattle Seahawks. He's spent his entire career in the NFC West. He spent his entire career going up against Pete Carroll's defenses twice a year. So it's not going to be anything new for him.
Right.
He does have success against the Seahawks in the run game. I think the Falcons will try to establish the run early on in this game. Cutter has his 10 to 20 scripted plays to start the game off, and I'm sure a good chunk of those are run plays. So if the Falcons can establish the run and take control of the clock early on in the game, it will behoove them to do so, because it would just give them the complete advantage in this game, because you want to keep that Seattle offense off the field as long as possible. And if not, then you can just break glass in case of emergency and go, balls to wall passing and try to take advantage of that Seattle secondary with your superior wide receiver talent. So, I just hope they don't keep smashing their head against the wall if the run game isn't working like they were last year.
Right, and it's like there were a lot of teams that were bad against the run last year that the Falcons thought they could take advantage of, and they couldn't. So this is one of those situations where, you can try it, and you should try it, but if you suck, then, just give it up and start throwing the ball, because we don't want to get, down 21 points or whatever it was to the Vikings like last week one. So at that point, it's time to start passing. So let's move on to how the Falcons match up on defense. And it's a little interesting. The Falcons were actually pretty solid against the run last year. So Seattle running the ball against Atlanta, in theory, that should be what the Falcons kind of want. They return a lot of the good run defenders from last year. They have a good amount of depth. They have the linebackers. Deion Jones is fully healthy. That kind of stuff. They have Dante Fowler, who's probably a better run defender than Vic Beasley, you would hope. No, he is, definitely. But yeah, we will see how that matchup goes. But really, in the passing game, it's kind of like, we don't really know, because we haven't seen AJ Terrell play. All the reports are good, but he's going to have to match up with, DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. So it's going to be a tough matchup for him either way. And then, Isaiah Oliver, like if Oliver has to match up with Metcalf, that's a big problem. So they really have to make sure that does not happen. But Darqueze Dennard in the slot against Lockett, I think that's, a matchup that's okay for the Falcons. So, they're going to need a lot of safety help for these speedy receivers, and, these young guys are going to get tested. What are your guys' thoughts on how the Falcons match up on defense?
Oh, I was going to give Evan the floor again because...
Oh, sorry. I was making an Instagram post for the Falcoholic.
Oh, just
follow it.
Always, a dutiful guy out there.
Look at that multitasking right now.
Excellent.
We're in the middle of the show. We're doing... Dave would be proud if you watched the show.
Yes. Just hitting those numbers. All right. Yeah, did you have any takes on the Falcons defense, how they match up in this game, Evan?
How they match in the defense? I mean... It's going to be tough because I think Chris Carson's super underrated. But if they can stop the run, I think they're going to have more success than anything. Terrell, it'll be interesting to see, because obviously we've heard good things out of camp and stuff. But when you haven't seen it in a game against, opponents who are literally trying to just burn you, not teach you a lesson at the same time, it's going to be interesting. And now we have Keanu Neal back. 2 season-ending injuries in a row. Hopefully he's still got the same, swagger about him, or whatever you want to call it. But we don't really know till we see them on the field.
Yeah.
Opening week like this, it's different, because no preseason games, no nothing. We pretty much just have camp to base all our expectations on, and that's something we haven't seen before. I know starters don't usually play a whole lot during the preseason, but we do see a little bit of them typically.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited. I mean, we're only a couple minutes away from getting a lot of questions answered. It seems like.
Yeah. Hopefully in a positive direction. Adnan, you got any final takes here on the defense before we wrap it up?
On the defense, yeah, I think it'll be so important to try and cause some turnovers in this game. Seattle won't give you too many opportunities, but they will with Chris Carson. He's one of the worst running backs in the game when it comes to ball control and taking care of the ball. He was starting to lose his starting gig last year to Rashad Penny because of his fumbling issues until Penny got hurt. Russell Wilson doesn't make too many mistakes, but if you can kind of start shutting down that run game a little bit, Russ will give you the opportunity to make a takeaway here and there. It'll be so important to win the turnover battle, in my opinion, in this game. And, I mentioned it the other day, the Seahawks wide receivers, they're very good wide receivers, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but it could be so much worse for AJ Terrell than matching up against Metcalf, for example, because no disrespect to Metcalf, he's a solid wide receiver, but he doesn't run a complete route tree at all. He's not a top 10 wide receiver. It would be so much worse if he was matched up with Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas or even an Allen Robinson or a Kenny Golladay.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more scared of each of those wide receivers than I am DK Metcalf. So, he can kind of build his confidence, get his legs under him a little bit. I don't think he'll shut Metcalf down, but it's not the worst nightmare and matchup in the world for our secondary in this game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And, I think with Denard, the veteran, probably getting to face off against Lockett in the slot, that's probably the best case scenario because, we can have an experienced guy facing off against arguably Seattle's best weapon. So that's probably a better overall matchup than putting the Rook on Lockett, who's more savvy, runs that complete route tree. With Metcalf, you kind of know what he's going to do. He just does it extremely well. So, you can know, and he's still going to beat you sometimes. So you just have to be ready there. So we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, guys, it's week 1. Get hyped. Rise up. We are going to be back after the game for the post-game show. That's always a lot of fun. I know you guys particularly like it if they lose, but, we're hoping they win. But, please.
And if Kevin, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I can give one stat on the Seattle Seahawks team last year, they were 10-2 in one-possession games last season. And, one-possession games teams are normally on average around 500. Mm-hmm. So that tells me that they were a pretty lucky football team, all things considered, and I'm eager to see if I'm sure it'll regress to the mean this year. There's no way a team can go 10-2 over and over again, but it'll be interesting to see if that begins regressing to the mean this season.
I just want to add one thing. I don't know if we knew this already, but D-Led said that the Falcons announced Carpenter starting at left guard. Were we not sure of that?
I guess we weren't sure. I thought Hennessy was starting, but whatever.
Oh, okay.
So big problem there.
I just assumed the Carpenter was starting.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
I hoped, I had hope, that we wouldn't have to deal with that. But
we are 3 minutes away from Falcons.
3 minutes away, guys. Get pumped. Let's do this. Let's not blow it in week 1 like as is tradition for the past 2 years. Let's set a new path for the franchise. Which
I remember sitting here last year, hyped before that Vikings game, and then afterwards
that got destroyed.
It was just we were all dead.
That got destroyed within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, it was over. Yeah, so that was not great. So let's at least last 20 minutes this time. Yeah.
Also, for anybody in the chat, if because it hasn't really been advertised, if you have DirecTV, Sunday tickets free this weekend, so you can watch all your games. And whatnot.
That could be a good bit of information for those of us that don't get the game locally, like myself. Guys. So we went a little long. I know you guys want to get to the game, so we'll sign off here quickly. Make sure you follow Evan Birchfield at Evan Birchfield on Twitter, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way, and myself, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, like I said, we'll have the post-game show afterwards, so tune in, maybe 10-15 minutes after the game. That one's always a lot of fun. Like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and we will see you guys after the game. Go Falcons, rise up. Let's get the W this week. All right, guys. Have a good one. Enjoy the game. We'll see you on Twitter. All right.